Laurel is a woman of approximately 38 years old, intelligent and dedicated, who has always seen in her marriage to Miles, a 43-year-old businessman, the security and companionship she always dreamed of. Both came from modest families, which brought them even closer together in the early years, full of hope and complicity. Laurel was never one to wait for a fairy tale, but she found in Miles a safe haven and a reason to believe in simple and honest love. They built a solid life, without extravagance, but with stability and mutual respect. When Miles suffers a serious car accident, everything changes abruptly. Due to serious leg injuries and a long recovery process, he now depends on Laurel for simple daily activities, something that contrasts drastically with the self-sufficient and strong man he used to be. The transformation is not easy for him, and even though he loves Laurel, he does not know how to deal with this new reality. Laurel takes on the role of caregiver with dedication, reorganizing her own routine to meet her husband's needs. Every day, she wakes up early, organizes his medications, takes care of his meals and even teaches him basic physical exercises that help him recover. She puts all her devotion into every small gesture, from helping Miles walk to holding his hand at night when he feels intense pain, believing that, with time, everything will return to normal. However, as the days turn into months, Laurel begins to notice that something is different. Miles, who used to shower her with affectionate words and jokes to ease her fatigue, now seems distant and often irritated. He responds to her coldly, avoids looking her in the eyes and even reacts badly to her touches and affection. The lack of intimacy and dialogue begins to weigh on her, but Laurel maintains her patient attitude, attributing these moments to the trauma of the accident. On some occasions, when she goes to the room left exclusively for him, Laurel finds her husband absorbed, staring into space or lost in thought, with his cell phone in his hands, closing the screen whenever she approaches. These small gestures arouse a slight distrust in her, but at the same time, Laurel feels guilty for questioning the sincerity of a man who depends on her for everything. In the few hours she has for herself, when she finally sits down in the living room chair to breathe, Laurel feels empty and the lack of someone to talk to. She tries to ignore the doubts that begin to arise and convince herself that the situation is temporary. However, there is something inside her, a discomfort that she cannot suppress. Even so, Laurel remains focused on Miles' well-being, carrying the relationship in her hands, like someone tending to a flame that is about to die out. In the days that follow, Laurel begins to notice subtle but disconcerting changes in Miles' behavior. Although he still depends on her for essential tasks, such as getting around and following his medication routine, he spends more and more time alone, in the room that, out of necessity, has been adapted to accommodate the demands of his recovery. She notices that Miles seems to want her presence less, and the silence between them begins to create an invisible barrier. One night, while she is organizing the medicines in the kitchen, she hears muffled laughter coming from the bedroom. When she goes in to see what is happening, she finds Miles with his cell phone in his hands and a slight smile. He quickly looks away and puts the cell phone aside, ending the moment of fun. Laurel feels a tightness in her chest, because that smile was the same one he used to give her, a spontaneous and sincere laugh, which now seems to be saved for someone else. On more than one occasion, she notices Miles typing intensely on his cell phone and, shortly after, deleting the messages. Despite trusting her husband, each of his actions arouses more insecurity, especially because he avoids bringing up the subject whenever she tries to get closer. When Laurel casually asks him who is sending so many messages, Miles answers evasively, saying that they are just coworkers. However, Laurel can't help but wonder what kind of coworkers would be sending messages so frequently and at unusual times. Laurel's doubts begin to affect her mood and state of mind. She tries to justify each suspicious behavior of Miles, convincing herself that she is being paranoid. After all, she is the one who tells herself that her husband's recovery is enough to make him emotionally shaken, confused and more reserved. However, a deep and uncontrollable instinct arises. This feeling bothers her, keeping her awake at night and taking away her peace of mind. As her suspicions grow, Laurel feels torn. She remembers all the difficulties they have faced together, how he has also supported her in challenging situations in the past. To think that Miles might be hiding something, especially at a time of such fragility, seems cruel and unfair. She wonders if she is not putting at risk what remains of her husband's emotional stability by questioning him or spying on his steps. At the same time, her insecurity persists, a doubt that she cannot eliminate. On a sunny afternoon, while Miles is resting, Laurel goes to the bedroom to organize some clothes and notices his cell phone forgotten on the bed, unlocked. She feels a strong urge to look at the device, but hesitates. She knows that a simple glance could change the course of her marriage forever, but curiosity mixes with fear, leaving her paralyzed for a few seconds. She decides not to touch her phone, but the decision does not bring any relief. On the contrary, she leaves the room feeling even more tormented and helpless. As the days pass, Laurel tries to get back into her routine and focus on caring for her husband, but her mind is always on Miles' mysterious interactions. Every moment he laughs to himself, looks at his cell phone or deletes messages feeds Laurel's insecurities, who can no longer ignore the possibility that something very important and perhaps devastating is happening. After days of uncertainty, Laurel feels exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The nights have been longer and lonelier, with Miles increasingly emotionally absent and indifferent to the effort she makes to keep him comfortable. On one such night, while lying next to her sleeping husband, Laurel notices the glow of his cell phone screen, revealing a new message. The name Evangeline appears on the notification. Although reluctant, the urge to find out the truth finally overcomes her reservations. Overcome with anxiety, Laurel picks up her cell phone and, with trembling hands, begins to read the messages. Her hands go cold when she sees the content of the conversations, where the texts reveal an intimacy and familiarity that goes beyond the line of simple friendship. The messages between Miles and Evangeline speak of overwhelming love, secret meetings, promises made in secret and memories of passionate moments. Laurel feels as if the ground beneath her feet is crumbling. As she reads the messages, she discovers that the relationship between Miles and Evangeline not only existed, but was at full intensity before the accident. Evangeline, in one of the last messages, mentions that she put an end to it because she could not deal with Miles' situation after the accident. Her words make it clear that the breakup was recent and did not occur due to a lack of love, but due to the inability to maintain the relationship amid Miles' dependence on Laurel. With silent tears streaming down her face, Laurel closes her cell phone and feels an unbearable pain in her chest. Miles' betrayal is not only a matter of infidelity, but also a sign that she has been left to be his caretaker, a role he accepts, but perhaps without the same devotion. Feeling used and disrespected, she spends the night awake, trying to understand at what point their trust was broken, and if there were signs that she simply ignored out of love. The next morning, with tired eyes and a controlled voice, Laurel decides to confront Miles. She chooses her words calmly, mentioning that she found the messages, but leaving room for him to explain. Miles initially denies it and tries to justify himself, saying that he did not want to hurt her and that the relationship with Evangeline was already over. However, Laurel's insistence forces him to admit the full truth: he kept a secret. They had been in an intense and secret relationship for months, and Evangeline had left him when she realized the severity of the accident. Miles claims that the accident made him understand where his true loyalty lies, trying to change the situation and swearing that he only wants to be with Laurel. However, every word he says sounds empty and distant to her. His attempt to justify his actions and ease Laurel's pain only increases her anguish. Laurel realizes that Miles hoped not to be discovered and, perhaps, believed that she would never dare to question him or investigate his behavior. After the confrontation, Laurel feels that the weight of the betrayal is much greater than she imagined. The image of her marriage, until then solid and secure, now seems fragile and tarnished. Heartbroken, Laurel withdraws to reflect and process everything that happened, trying to understand how she can move forward. She feels alone in her pain, with no one to vent to, and realizes that her dedication to Miles has distanced her from any support network she might have had. Even though she is emotionally devastated, Laurel feels something new blossoming inside her, a determination not to let this betrayal define who she is. Even though she doesn't yet know how to deal with this situation, there is a spark of pride and self-sufficiency beginning to emerge. She realizes that, despite her life being filled with uncertainty and fear, she has an inner strength she never knew existed. After the initial confrontation, the house that was once a refuge for Laurel now becomes a place of oppressive silence. She can barely look at Miles, feeling a mixture of pain and contempt whenever she sees him. Both avoid unnecessary conversation, and Laurel realizes that her presence, which she once saw as essential to her husband's well-being, now seems to be a burden to him. Alone in her room, Laurel finds herself trapped in memories and moments that now seem to have a new interpretation. Every moment of Miles' coldness and distance takes on a painful meaning, as if every small detail had been a subtle signal that she ignored. Laurel wonders how she missed the signs, and it makes her question her own intuition and her ability to trust. In search of support, Laurel reaches out to Sarah, a friend she hasn't seen in years but has always been someone she can trust. When they meet for coffee, Laurel feels like she can finally let go of the weight that's been suffocating her. She tells Sarah the whole story, and Sarah listens attentively, offering support and comfort, but also the strength to see the situation clearly. Sarah encourages her to think about herself and consider what she really wants for her future. Sarah's words plant a seed of reflection in Laurel. For the first time, she realizes that she has a choice and that she doesn't need to remain trapped in a situation that makes her suffer. She begins to glimpse the possibility of seeking a life where she doesn't have to carry the weight of a relationship that has lost respect and loyalty. The conversation with her friend helps her understand that, although she has dedicated herself body and soul, this relationship is no longer healthy. While Laurel begins to realize that she needs to put herself first, Miles remains oblivious to her pain. He tries to resume his life in a practical way, avoiding any deep discussion about their future. Laurel realizes that he acts as if the conflict has already been resolved, hoping that, with time, she will accept the situation and everything will return to normal. This cold and apathetic attitude of Miles only reinforces the perception that he does not value her sacrifice and love. Laurel finds herself at a crossroads. On one side, there is the man to whom she dedicated so many years, someone with whom she built a life and shared dreams. On the other hand, there is a reality where she is alone, but finally free to rebuild her path without the shackles of a betrayal that tore her trust apart. Sarah's support gives Laurel the courage she needed to face this choice. One night, after days of introspection, Laurel decides she needs a definitive answer about the future of her marriage. She sits down with Miles and asks him directly if he still wants to stay in the relationship and if he is willing to make any effort to win her back. Miles hesitates, avoiding giving a clear answer, and ends up confessing that, although he loves her deeply, he is not sure if he can live a life without Evangeline or, at least, without the freedom he had before the accident. Miles' answer, although vague, is enough for Laurel. She realizes that the love he claims to feel for her is not enough to sustain the marriage or to reciprocate her dedication. Feeling emotionally exhausted, but with a new certainty, she makes the decision to leave the marriage. With tears in her eyes, she thanks him for all the years of happiness they had, but says she can't stay with someone who doesn't see her worth. When Laurel finally leaves, there is a mixture of sadness and relief in her heart. She knows that although the pain of betrayal will haunt her, now she has a chance to start over. The first night alone is silent, but for the first time in months, she sleeps with the feeling that she has done the best for herself. After making the decision to move away from Miles, Laurel finds herself immersed in an avalanche of memories. She relives in her mind the happy moments, the laughter and the companionship that she always thought were real. Every detail seems more painful now, an open wound that makes her question if any of those moments were valuable to him. Even physically distant, the love for Miles still lives in her heart, and this leaves her divided, as if she were trapped in a cycle of memories and resentments. The humiliation weighs on her like a constant shadow. Laurel remembers the moments when he smiled on the phone and the secret meetings he had with Evangeline while she believed everything was fine. The betrayal was not only a breach of trust, but a profound devaluation of her dedication and sacrifice. Feeling betrayed by someone to whom she dedicated years of her life, especially at a moment of vulnerability, leaves her with a pain that seems impossible to heal. Determined not to go back on her decision, Laurel decides to consult a lawyer. Even though it is a practical and necessary action, she feels anguish at the thought of the marriage officially dissolving. The lawyer, an understanding and discreet man named Garrett, listens to her attentively and reassures her about the process. He also reminds her that, in cases like hers, where trust has been betrayed, the decision to move on is a step of courage and self-worth. These words give her a brief sense of empowerment. To avoid feeling alone, Laurel continues to talk frequently with Sarah, her longtime friend. They meet for lunch or casual outings, and Laurel begins to realize that, despite the pain, there is life outside of marriage. Sarah encourages her to think about things that make her feel good, small projects, forgotten hobbies, or even the idea of a short trip to breathe new air. Each meeting with Sarah reminds her of what it is like to be heard and valued, something she had not felt for a long time with Miles. Laurel begins to dedicate herself to small personal pleasures that she had neglected. She goes back to reading novels, watching her favorite movies, and even gardening, an old passion. With each activity, she rediscovers parts of herself that were forgotten during the years she lived entirely for Miles' life and dreams. This period of reconnecting with her own interests helps to heal the wound of humiliation, even though the process is slow and full of ups and downs. While Laurel slowly builds an independent life, Miles tries to get closer to her. He sends sporadic messages, calls a few times, and even shows up unexpectedly at her new home. In these attempts to get closer, Miles uses a tone of regret, tries to show himself vulnerable, and asks for another chance. He says that he has learned from his mistakes and that, above all, he misses Laurel's support and presence in his life. In the face of Miles' attempts, Laurel finds herself torn. As much as she has progressed in her new life, the love she still feels for him continues to fight against her wounded pride. She wonders if she would be able to forgive him and rebuild trust, or if this would put her in a fragile position, where the humiliation could happen again. Deep down, Laurel feels that the decision to stay away is the safest one, but there are times when the desire to rescue the past almost dominates her. After several conversations with Sarah and moments of solitary reflection, Laurel finally understands that returning to Miles would mean giving up everything she has regained, her peace, her strength, and her self-respect. She realizes that self-love is the only way to avoid reliving the pain of the past. In a final conversation, she tells Miles that, although she still loves him, she cannot return to a relationship that made her doubt her own worth. The final farewell is intense, but Laurel feels relieved when she realizes that she is free to live a life where trust will not be a constant issue. The pain is still there, but she understands that true healing will come with time and with the new life she is building, where her happiness does not depend on anyone else. After deciding to move on, Laurel dedicates herself to a routine that involves not only the practical organization of her life, but also a close look at her emotional well-being. Every day, she sets aside time for activities that she always wanted to do, but that, during the marriage, were left on the back burner. She signs up for pottery classes, something that had sparked her curiosity, and rediscovers the pleasure of creating something with her own hands, feeling productive and satisfied. During one of these classes, Laurel meets Elliot again, an old college friend who had always been interested in her, but who respected and admired her in a genuine way, without ever going beyond the limits of friendship. Elliot, now a single and mature man, proves to be a kind companion, with a light and friendly approach. They start talking after class and soon decide to meet for coffee, rekindling their friendship in a simple and enriching way for both of them. Elliot becomes a refreshing presence for Laurel. He encourages her to talk about her life, her dreams, and everything she has put aside over the years. Without judgment, Elliot listens to her with genuine interest and shares his own stories of challenges and overcoming. Laurel realizes that by opening up and trusting him, she is healing emotional wounds that previously seemed insurmountable. She feels a lightness that she hasn't experienced in years, as if she can finally relax and be herself, without pressure or expectations. As the weeks go by, Laurel begins to enjoy simple moments, such as walking through botanical gardens, watching plays, or simply reading a book in a cafe. Elliot accompanies her in many of these activities, but she also appreciates the moments when she is alone, exploring herself and rediscovering her zest for life. Each new experience is a reminder that the world offers more than she imagined and that self-love is the basis for a full life. This period of self-discovery leads Laurel to re-evaluate what she really wants in a relationship and, above all, what she expects from herself. She understands that her happiness should not depend exclusively on another person. In her reflections, Laurel reconnects with the strong and determined woman she was before marriage and who, little by little, lost under the pressures and expectations of the relationship. Now, she feels ready to explore the world with a new perspective. Laurel has always wanted to open a small ceramics and craft studio, a dream that, over time, fell dormant. Motivated by Elliot and the new circle of friends she built in her classes, she decides to invest in this project. Even though it is still an initial idea, Laurel begins to make plans, research locations, and structure her savings to make this dream a reality. The planning process fills her with hope and enthusiasm, and she realizes that she is creating something uniquely hers. As her project takes shape, her relationship with Elliot also deepens. Although they are both cautious, there is an emotional and intellectual connection between them that goes beyond friendship. He respects her deeply, and they enjoy their time together without rushing, sharing small joys and discoveries. Laurel feels safe with him, realizing that a healthy and authentic relationship is possible without sacrifices that compromise her happiness. Despite her connection with Elliot, Laurel decides that she wants to maintain the autonomy that she has valued so much in this new cycle. She does not want to rush into a new commitment and prefers to let time and the naturalness of the encounters define the rhythm of her life with him. For the first time, she is at peace with her own life, feeling strong enough to be happy with or without a relationship, and valuing the freedom she has gained. Laurel concludes that, despite the pain she has faced, the experience served to show her her own resilience. She begins to see life with gratitude, not for the difficult moments, but for the chance to rediscover herself. By opening her heart to new possibilities and dedicating herself to her own projects, she feels renewed, a complete woman aware of her worth. On a normal day, while working on her new routine, Laurel receives an unexpected visitor, Miles. He is visibly different, with signs of regret and fatigue on his face. Laurel feels a mix of surprise and discomfort when she sees him. Although she believes she has overcome the pain, she realizes that Miles' presence awakens conflicting emotions, especially now that she is building a more authentic life. Miles sits down with Laurel and, in an honest and vulnerable way, expresses how much he messed up and how much he misses her. He sincerely apologizes for everything he put her through and admits that, after the breakup, he understood her true value and the love he had ignored. He talks about his own loneliness and how he realized that true love, the one that took care of him at his worst, was Laurel's, and not some fleeting relationship. As she listens to Miles, Laurel feels the weight of each word. The sadness and pain of everything she has experienced resurfaces, and she realizes that, despite her strength, she still has an emotional bond with him. Even though she has distanced herself, Miles has been a part of her life for years, and she has shared many dreams and plans with him. His confession makes her question, has she really gotten over it all? And, more importantly, does there even be a place for him in her new life? Miles's proposal for reconciliation leaves Laurel torn. On the one hand, she feels that by forgiving him, she would be valuing the time and effort she has put into their marriage. On the other hand, she fears giving up all the progress she has made. Laurel wonders if she is ready to return to a relationship that has made her suffer, even though Miles seems genuine in his change. She remembers everything she has gone through and how much her own happiness has become a priority in this process of starting over. While Miles waits for an answer, Laurel turns to Elliot for clarity. In a frank conversation, she shares her doubts and insecurities, without hiding the fact that Miles' request has affected her. Instead of pressuring her, Elliot listens attentively and says that, above all, he wants to see her happy and at peace, whatever her decision may be. His maturity and understanding reinforce the idea that, in the new life she has created, she is respected and valued in an authentic way. After a week of intense reflection and sleepless nights, Laurel finally makes her decision. She meets Miles in a quiet park, a neutral place where she feels she can express herself sincerely. With a firm and calm voice, she tells him that, although she still loves him in a way, she can't go back to being the woman she once was. The experience of living without him, of discovering her own worth, has brought her a peace that she is not willing to lose. Miles remains silent for a few moments, respecting Laurel's decision, although he is visibly shaken. He understands that she made her decision not out of revenge, but because of a new vision of herself. He thanks her for everything they experienced together and says goodbye with a mixture of sadness and respect, accepting that their relationship was important, but that it now needs to end. After this farewell, Laurel feels an inner peace that confirms her choice. She realizes that the love she experienced with Miles was real, but now belongs to the past. On her current path, she is open to new experiences, in no rush to define what comes next, but with the certainty that she is in control of her own life and choices. With her heart at peace, Laurel continues to explore her new project and her relationship with Elliot. She lives each moment with ease, knowing that she is finally free to be who she really is. What the future holds for her no longer worries her. Now, she feels prepared for anything, as long as she is at peace with herself. After her final farewell to Miles, Laurel begins to reflect on the path she has taken so far. She remembers the moments of pain and anguish she faced after the betrayal, but she also realizes how much each of these experiences helped her rebuild herself. Sitting in the living room of her new apartment, Laurel observes the environment around her, now filled with objects that represent only her choices and preferences. This space reflects the new woman she has become, independent, strong, and aware of her worth. With the support of Elliot and her new friends, Laurel decides to take a more concrete step towards her professional dream. She finds a small space in the city center, ideal for setting up her ceramics and craft studio. After a few days of preparation, Laurel begins to decorate the place with her pieces and opens the doors to the public, feeling a mixture of pride and enthusiasm. This studio is more than a place to work, it is a symbol of her strength and autonomy. Over time, the studio begins to attract a loyal following, and Laurel finds herself surrounded by people who share her passion for art. She becomes a beloved figure in the community, known for her kindness and willingness to help those who want to learn. This support network makes her realize that, even after so much suffering, there is a world full of affection and generosity waiting for her, and that she has a lot to offer. She feels welcomed and accepted in a way she had never experienced before. While she dedicates herself to her studio, Laurel continues to spend time with Elliot. They both choose a light and unpressured relationship, and he becomes a great supporter of her new venture. Elliot, always attentive, does not pressure her into commitments and values the time and space she needs to consolidate her achievements. Together, they share a genuine connection, built on respect and admiration, without her feeling like she has to give up anything to be by his side. Laurel begins to truly enjoy her independence. She feels the pleasure of making decisions with confidence, whether at work, in her personal life or in the small choices of everyday life. The fear that had accompanied her since the separation turns into a sense of power and self-sufficiency. She understands that, although she has loved ones around her, her happiness is in her own hands and that she does not need someone by her side to feel complete. One afternoon, when leaving the studio, Laurel runs into Evangeline, Miles's ex-lover, by chance. The woman, surprised by the encounter, expresses a brief apology, but Laurel interrupts her with a calm and confident look, saying that story is no longer part of her life. She says goodbye quickly and continues on her way, without any hard feelings. For her, this encounter is a definitive closure and a confirmation that the past no longer has power over her present. Inspired by the journey of overcoming she has experienced, Laurel writes a letter to the younger version of herself, who once dedicated herself to a love that devalued her. She describes the woman she has become and expresses a deep sense of pride. The letter is not just a reminder to herself, but an act of self-care and an acknowledgement of the strength that has always existed within her. It is as if she is saying goodbye, for the last time, to the pain and uncertainty that have accompanied her for so long. Now, Laurel looks to the future with hope, knowing that she is ready to embrace whatever comes, but without rushing. She allows herself to live each day as a new opportunity, and feels that her life is in balance, marked by the peace she has finally achieved. Her studio, her friendships and her relationship with Elliot are like a new beginning, but this time, she is in control. Laurel ends this stage of her life with a heart full of gratitude and the certainty that she made the best decision for herself. The past is a distant memory, and she now embraces each moment with lightness and authenticity. The choice she made to prioritize her own peace and happiness shows that the most important love is the one you have for yourself. Laurel wakes up on a peaceful morning and smells the soft aroma of coffee in the air. Each day in her apartment is a silent celebration of her freedom and all she has achieved. She feels at peace, as if each challenge she has faced was a necessary step to get here. This new routine is marked by simple choices, all made by her and for her, without the shadows of the past. Upon arriving at the studio, Laurel is greeted with smiles and warm greetings from her clients and friends. The space, decorated with her pieces and details that reflect her personality, is a true reflection of her essence. Each vase, sculpture and ceramic carries a bit of her strength and history. The studio is not just a business, it is a personal achievement that represents her independence and the fulfillment of a dream that she only now had the courage to make a reality. Her relationship with Elliot continues to evolve naturally and harmoniously. He is not just a companion, but a friend and confidant who respects her every decision. Laurel realizes that with him, there is no need to rush, label or rigid commitments. The love they share is light and genuine, built on trust and mutual respect. She knows that, with him, she can be authentic and free, without fear of losing her individuality. On one of her days off, Laurel meets Sarah for a relaxed lunch. They talk about life, projects and the future, remembering how much they have evolved since the beginning of this new phase. Sarah praises Laurel for the success of her studio and for having found the courage to live according to her own desires. Their friendship has grown stronger during difficult times, and Laurel realizes that Sarah's presence was fundamental in her recovery and rediscovery. One quiet afternoon, while sorting through some old papers, Laurel finds a photo of her wedding with Miles. For a moment, she looks back on the past, but instead of sadness, she feels only a slight nostalgia and gratitude for the lessons she has learned. The love she once felt for him is part of who she is, but today it is just a distant memory, without any emotional weight. She keeps the photo with affection, not as a wound, but as a page turned. Laurel begins to live each day with genuine gratitude. She realizes that the true love that sustained her was self-love, the courage to rebuild herself and believe in herself. Each new client, each piece produced, and each meeting with friends are celebrations of her freedom and authenticity. Her life is now a reflection of all that she has achieved and the respect she has for herself. With a light heart and a peaceful mind, Laurel looks to the future without rushing and without unrealistic expectations. She knows that whatever comes will be welcome, because she finally feels complete. Life has given her a new beginning, and she embraces it with maturity, recognizing that happiness lies in the small choices and in the lightness of each moment. With a thriving studio, loyal friends, and a relationship that respects her freedom, Laurel feels complete. The choice to prioritize her peace, her worth, and her own happiness has brought her to a state of fulfillment that she never imagined. She knows that, from now on, her life is hers, and that the past is just a chapter in a story that still has many blank pages. Subscribe to our channel, this is very important so that we can make more stories for you. Hugs.